Hi everyone, and welcome to the Catholic Mothers Ireland YouTube channel. We're so glad you found your way here. This is a space created for mothers by mothers, a community where we walk together through the beautiful, challenging, joy-filled journey of motherhood. Here, we talk openly about the realities of family life, the blessings and struggles we face each day, and the ways our Catholic faith strengthens, guides, and encourages us. On this channel, you can expect conversations about finding grace in the everyday moments of motherhood, building strong, faithful families, growing spiritually as women of God, supporting one another through shared experiences, learning from inspiring guests, testimonies, and practical discussions. Whether you're a new mum, a seasoned mother, or someone seeking community and encouragement, you are very welcome here. We also invite you to subscribe to the channel, to join in the conversation in the comments, and to share these videos with anyone who might be uplifted by them. Thank you for being part of the Catholic Mothers Ireland family. Let's journey together in faith, love, and motherhood. One prayer, one story, and one video at a time. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Catholic Mothers Ireland Mamcast Conversations. I'm your host, Sinéad Strong. And today we're diving deep into the three pillars that hold our society together, but are under huge pressure at the minute. Those are marriage, motherhood, and family. We live in a culture that is constantly redefining what love is and leaving many couples and parents feeling disconnected and overwhelmed. So, how do we rebuild our homes from the ground up? To help us answer that, we're joined by an absolute powerhouse in Catholic theology. He's the founder and president of the Fulton Sheen Institute, a world-class Mariologist, and a leading authority on one of the greatest communicators of the 20th century, Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen. He holds a doctorate in sacred theology from the Angelicum in Rome. He's the author of The Woman, and he has dedicated his life to using timeless wisdom to heal modern families. So please welcome to the show, Dr. Peter Howard. Dr. Howard, it is an absolute honor to have you here. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Sinead. This is a great pleasure of mine. I love your name, by the way. It's a powerhouse name, Sinead
Thank you.
Strong.
Yes, I
So
need
that
it.
that's really cool.
Thank you so much. So, I invited you on today. So, as with all our podcasts, we really do focus on marriage, motherhood, and family. But before we get into that, I suppose I want to talk to you. Big exciting year in the world of Fulton Sheen. He is going to be beatified this September. Do you want to share your excitement?
Yeah, very excited. We waited for this for 7 years. And for many who may not know, he was weeks away from being beatified in December of 2019, and the plug got pulled. I'm not going to revisit any of all the history surrounding that, but it was it's 7 years is a long time.
Yeah.
And with like as you were saying, his impact that he had when he was alive, and he reached 30 million people a week in his prime. Even when he was just in his earlier years, he was reaching 10 million people, 30 million people a week in the analog days. And so just imagine, if this is how I always felt about it, was it's not a matter of, oh, she's not blessed. It's what becoming blessed means for the world and for the church, because that proclamation, when that happens, will be announced to hundreds of millions, if not billions of people. I mean, there's over 8 billion people, so I'd probably be safe to say billions of people.
Yeah.
It'll reach their homes in some fashion of this new blessed that the world once knew. And like I said, a powerhouse of truth. He impacted people. I mean, most of his audience, people don't realize, was non-Catholic. So to have all this come back, it's like now these souls are going to be reached. Not the choir who watch him from time to time on YouTube. Now people are going to rediscover him. And also a lot of grace comes, floods the church in moments like this, like when there's a proclamation of a dogma, a canonization of a saint. I mean, the prophecies of Saint Carlo Acutis that were his mother was given, that
Yeah.
he after his canonization would have a huge, wildfire of faith for the young. Well, Sheen's going to have this, I believe, one for two big ways. One for our own country here in America, as we celebrate our 250th anniversary, just a few days from now, this recording, and we need him now more than ever, as our country is like standing on the edge of a cliff of whether what our future is even going to be. And yet God's like, here's the answer. You had to wait, but now it's worth it. Like here's the one you're looking
Perfect
for.
time.
Exactly. And he's a man that, like I said, the world knew. I mean, talking with you in Ireland, he was a truly a saint that you could be equally claimed as Irish and American. He
Yeah.
was raised in County Roscommon, and
Oh, we're
great
happy to claim
love.
him.
Exactly, and he'd be happy. Like I said, his name is Irish.
Yes.
It's the Gaelic Fulton meaning um, uh, war, and Sheen referring to peace. What a prophetic name! A man who
Yeah.
understands the war we're in, and we'll talk about that, especially with the family, the cultural war, the war of civilization, the war that's not. This is not metaphorical, figurative. It's real. Like it's all teeters right now for the fate of nations, the fate of families, and he's a man who also understands heaven's blueprint for peace of soul, peace, in the among nations. So he's like the spotlight's on him. We
Yeah.
need to discover him if you don't know of him, or you've just heard of him, or if you watched him and you just you knew of Sheen. Oh, he was incredible. My grandmother watched him, and we were forced to watch him. Well, rediscover why though he's really blessed. And it's not just because he was a TV celebrity. Otherwise, we'd have lots of celebrity saints.
Yeah.
So this is exciting. September 24th of this year, which is the Feast of Our Lady of Mercy, another providential
Wow.
and prophetic meeting
And
there.
does the beatification take place in America, or does that take place in Rome, or what way does that work?
Yes, it takes place in America. I think it was Benedict XVI who changed the protocol because popes
Yeah.
can easily where both of those used to be in Rome,
In Rome.
and then they switched the beatification to the local diocese or somewhere near there,
Yeah.
at least in the country.
Yeah.
And then a delegate would be sent from the Holy See on behalf of the Pope to then issue the proclamation, which only takes really a few minutes at the beginning of
Of
Mass.
Mass.
So it'll be here, and it'll another prophetic, you could say, setup for this is he's from the Diocese of Peoria, which is in Illinois, about
The-
3 hours south of Chicago. Um, and then south of Peoria is the city of St. Louis, and it's considered the heart of America. Its location in the Midwest, as we call it. And the place where he's going to be beatified, it's massive. It's a dome because they need 80,000 people to squeeze in there. It's called the Dome at America's Center. And so Sheen I call him America's saint. We have
Yeah.
other saints, of course, but he's like the first among the male born American saints. But he's also truly American in the way he was raised and all the things that would characterize what we would say Americana. Like he embodied this. You know, um, he didn't come from Eastern Europe and had a strong faith and brought it here. Like he was born in the farms of Illinois, went to Catholic schools. He was
He's an
about as
altar boy.
American as it could. Yeah, he could be as American as you could imagine. And the things that he liked, and then the people, and then being in the media, like he just fits the bill. So, and he said that too. He says we need an American saint. So anyway, the fact that this will be take place at the Dome at America Center on the Feast of Our Lady of Mercy. I always tell people pause and reflect on what God is trying to tell us through that. Fulton Sheen, one of my favorite lines of his, he says, God doesn't do anything in history without the greatest finesse of detail. So the why is the most important question. Why Sheen? Why now? and why on that date.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, the day before, Barry, our mutual friend Barry, he reminded me just the other day, because I was talking about we're having a conference to get people prepared for this beatification, not just like all hyped up like you would for the World Cup or other thing. You know, like we really want to get people prepared. The day before, I believe, that's according to him, he said it's the feast of Saint Padre Pio, which is September 23rd. And I
That's
think
right.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So we were just talking about that off air before we got on. Was you're talking about Saint Padre Pio? Um, all of these little things are amazing. If we stop and pause, there are no coincidences, especially the times in which we live. So
Yeah.
I'm very excited, to come back to your question. And really, it's the Sheen revolution. If you, so that's one of the things I call it. What that's going to mean for families, for nations, and the church at large, is just beginning.
Yeah. And even today, as we're recording, it's the 1st of July, and that's the feast of St. Oliver Cromwell. And he was the last of the martyrs to be put to death, do you know, as well. So it was a tumultuous time in the church for him whenever he died. And there's just so many different things. But I think Fulton Sheen, my own experience, like I've listened to loads of his videos online now. Thank God that they're all available there. He's just speaks, there's such authority in his voice. You can't help but listen to him. And I'm not surprised that many people that listen to him don't have faith, because he just had that charisma. He just drew you in, and he spoke the truth with conviction, and you knew it. You knew when you heard it that this is right. So
Absolutely. Yeah, he definitely, and that's when I first got introduced to him from a retreat that my sister had given me, and which I thought was just okay, almost not accidental, but it was like I didn't think anything of it at the time. Um, it ended up it changed my life because the moment I hit play, in those days when we had cassette tapes, uh, I was going out on a private retreat, and I hit play, and honestly, I was like, I'm gonna give him 10, 15 minutes. And like, either I connect with this man or I don't. That's just kind of how I am. Like I'm on retreat. I already have my agenda for how I'm going to do this. And then everything got derailed because within 3 minutes, I was completely hooked. And I felt like in the Gospels, for those who listen to our Lord, who is this man who speaks with such authority? Like they couldn't ignore him. And that's how it was as he spoke to me. And I listened and I studied under some of the best theologians, professors, but nobody took me captive from the moment he started speaking than Fulton Sheen. And my whole entire life was then changed from that. And at some point, point to the little history of that.
yes, tell everybody about this amazing story of this microphone beside you.
Yeah, I'll try to summarize it because I know off air I was like, well, this could take a while, but that retreat that I was on, you know, having now studied him ever since, because that was like the D Day, where um, Sheen would use this phrase too, the divine invasion, coming into a soul. Didn't even see it. I didn't see it coming. My sister was the one who gave me these tapes, and like Sheen also said, he says, the course of one's life is not determined by the trivial incidents of day to day living, but by a few decisive moments. Little did I know that the decision to give this retreat a try would end up being one of the biggest pivot points of my entire life, next to, of course, and this is actually before I was married. So it was a big moment. Eventually led to my spouse. But anyway, I ended up listening to this retreat, and I knew that no matter what God was calling me to, my mission was going to be bringing him to the world and getting to know him, because I was just, you get a little, uh, you kind of jump the gun. You think, oh, I know everything about Sheen from one thing. I felt like I did because I absorbed every word he said, and I almost
Yeah.
memorized the retreat. I listened to it so many times. Years later, when I was, fast forwarding, 8 years, I started doing doctorate work on Sheen, and I managed to contact the man who recorded that retreat. And his name was Dan Steffen. He was a seminarian at the time, later became a Catholic broadcaster and on the radio. And we connected, and he gave me then a copy of his original remastered CD. So, like, this is highest quality. It's like I'm talking to you right now. That's how clear Sheen was. And then I started my doctorate later on. And so now we're fast forwarding another 8 years. And I was traveling through Texas with my family. We had left everything that we had, and we just did family ministry for about a year
Wow.
on the road. And we drove through Texas, which wasn't anywhere close to where we were because we were in Illinois. And, America's really big. Texas is its own country. But I said, we're going to be going down there. He said, well, I want to give you something. I'm like, all right, what is it? He says, well, you'll have to see it, but you're the only one who's going to really appreciate it. So I got down there. He talks to me about this big box he's going to pull out of his car, and he says, just take good care of it. And he says, of course, it has to do something with Sheen. I call it my Sheen shrine. And so um, I should have grabbed the glass over here. I have some other things, but anyway, I didn't open it for a long time because we didn't really have a place to put it, and I was so nervous. He said, "There's glass." And so I was like, oh gosh. So I waited quite a bit. And when I opened it up, there was a glass globe around this microphone, and it had pictures of Fulton Sheen and Dan Steffen. I'm pointing to him over there. And it has a picture of Sheen also delivering one of the conferences. And you can see this microphone. So long story short, this was the microphone that Sheen used. Dan
Wow.
cut the cable. And so, it would have been like right here or a little bit further. Through this medium, my entire life was changed, and the power of the media. And the fact that this was recorded. Like, imagine if that wasn't recorded, who knows where my life would be, to be honest.
I
Um,
know it's huge.
and to have this, I mean, to hold it in my hand, I call it a second class relic because he used it.
Yeah.
Um, but just it's just a constant reminder, though, of everything that you do when you're spreading the gospel. You never know the impact. And thanks be to God that Sheen did this retreat. Dan Steffen put his talent to work to record it, and and then he also in there he get underneath this microphone. There's this little stem here. I took them out. They're over there because are all the original CDs that he used to remaster it. So I had the original ones because it was
Wow.
given in January of 1972. I was born 1974. Here's another cool thing. This is only matters probably to me, but I looked at the date because he had a date on the CDs. The first day of the retreat was my birthday, January 18th. So I was
Wow.
like, the Lord, this was meant to happen. Because a lot of times, you're like, oh, am I looking in this tube? Like, the Lord has given so many confirmations, and whenever I go through a hard time, I'll look over and I'm like, no, like this is a reminder. He's made it
Yeah.
very clear. This is the
This is
mission
your
He's
path.
given me,
Yeah.
and my mission is instrumental. It is to bring Sheen in a new way to light the world on fire like it's never been, just like the prophecy of St. Patrick that is now huge in Ireland. I'm tapping into that from 433 of the flame coming back, being rekindled in the north,
In the north,
and
I up
and
there,
and for
Barry's taking it
it,
on single-handedly.
exactly. And it's funny, you get to know Barry, and he's a piece of work, and he just uses. It's like Fulton Sheen's autobiography. It's called Treasure in Clay. God
Yes.
chooses, like, why me? I'm the last person. Honestly, I go to prayer, I make a holy hour, and when I do this exercise, I almost weep because I'm like, I can't believe you chosen somebody like me. I mean, you think of anybody trying to communicate Sheen, you can't do that.
No.
I'm like, and I know myself well enough. I'm like, you really chose like the wrong person. If you didn't give me all of these extra signs of things, I'd probably be like, I may be forcing something that I'm not even worthy to do because I'm not.
Yeah.
And and little things little things he gives me in prayer of like almost like, don't worry, I know, Peter. But that's why we chose you, because it's in these people like you God will eventually show how great he is. I'm like,
Yeah.
all right. And then the other thing is, I remind myself, Fulton Sheen, his real name isn't Fulton. His baptismal name was Peter. So I was like,
Wow.
I'm like, all right, I got to
Okay, then.
stop.
I'll take it.
Yeah, I just got to shut up. A guy, what do you want me to do? So anyway, it's been such a blessing. And like what you're doing right now, all of this is an extension of what this is like the starting point, at least for me. And everything I've done is connected to this. And those
Thank
who are
God.
in the podcasting world, what you're doing right now, it's connected to this. And this is connected to his beatification. We had a whole movement that we started 3 years ago we petitioned Rome. I delivered the petition to Rome back in September on behalf of people all around the world, really begging Rome to reschedule the date for beatification because there was no reason to stall it.
Yeah.
And I got a chance to do it when I went to the canonizations of Carlo Acutis and Pier Giorgio Frassati.
Oh, you were
I
in Rome
delivered,
for that?
yeah. And I prayed. I said, look, and I told anybody who signed it, it could be thousands of people, all 6 inhabited continents were on there. And I said, if I ever get to Rome, I will hand deliver this. I may only be able just to deliver it and walk away, because can't just say I want to go in. And to the
Well,
dicastery of
you
saints.
can. You can see
Oh,
what they
I mean, I
say.
will certainly ask. I'll just pretend I'm Italian and like I just slip in there. Dress nice.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I was able to hand it over, and I was able to get an audience, a private audience with the undersecretary to talk about Sheen. And
Wow.
so, and within just a few months of that meeting, the announcement came out. It was leaked that the beatification was going to be rescheduled. And the other thing too, I also said if I make it to Rome and I get close enough to Pope Leo, I will just shout as loud as I can, please beatify Fulton Sheen, because he's an American, which is the other crazy
Yeah.
thing. I'm not saying this in Italian,
No.
it was surreal. And what happened? He came right in front of me after his audience. I'm right there at the barrier. When you're there, you have those little alleyways that he drives down. I'm literally right there. My son's on a chair behind me with his GoPro, and he comes right near me because there's a man who has a baby. So that's always a good thing. Always be
Yeah.
next to somebody with a
Stand
baby,
beside the
because
baby.
they stop, they hand me, and I'm like, please beatify Fulton Sheen. And I kept saying, and then eventually he looked right at me and he gave me a quick thumbs up, and then he left. So take it for whatever it is. I'll claim it and say, on behalf of everybody that I was representing, to be able to do those two things. And then shortly after, Rome tells Peoria, set a date. There's no doubt that the rosaries, holy hours, everything of this
Everything.
entire movement, and then this little gesture, I think, from God, for those opportunities, were all involved in making this happen. So, anyway, that's a long historical point, but everybody is what you're doing right here, Sinead, is this is all part of it. And for families, marriages, um, gosh, he's a prophet whose time has come.
I think so. Because, a lot of the times I keep saying to people, you need to hear about Fulton Sheen. You should listen to Fulton Sheen. Before I had ever, like, I've read Treasure and Clay um years ago, and anytime anybody's looking for a saint, and I'm just like, Fulton Sheen, he was a man ahead of his time. Loads of the Catholic mothers, you see different videos and quotes. He's just there's a consolation in listening to him. It's like he gets it, he understood, like he was so ahead of his time,
Mm-hmm.
and thank
I
God.
think, yeah, I think that's one of the most common reactions that people have is, especially if they met him, but when they're listening, it's how does he know my soul so well? Like he's
Hmm.
saying exactly what I'm longing, and he's saying it in a language that anyone can understand,
Yeah,
and that's what's rare. And
yeah.
sometimes that's people, they don't see his true brilliance because he spoke in a language that everyone could
Well, he
understand.
was down to earth, and I think that's where we're missing in the world a lot. That it doesn't need to be all, high level, just relate to each other on a personal level. And that's what he did. He understood, like he met so many people and he ministered to so many, and he had the heart of Jesus, and he just knew you. and he
Hmm.
just had such a beautiful way about him. I just love him. So thank God. I'm so happy for you and for everybody that's been involved in this for in a much deeper level than me. But maybe we'll get into some discussions to draw on Fulton Sheen and also our Blessed Mother on that reality of our day-to-day lives and living our faith in the world today. Because Fulton Sheen has spoke extensively about the family as the bedrock of civilization. From your research, what did Sheen see as the single greatest threat to the modern family? And is that still the same threat today as he was speaking about then?
It is. I think to simplify the answer, because it's a loaded question. Um, well, it's because if I were to say, well, if you read what he had to say or listened to what he had to say on things like communism, people might be like, what does that have to do? It had everything to do with it because the biggest battle was whether God was going to be at the center of civilization or not be in the center. And if it's not in the center, what fills that void? And he says it's not going to be atheism, um, because atheists pretty much believe in God. They just rebel against him. He says it'll most likely be the God of man that they'll make himself, for himself, his own ego, as he pronounced it. Um, but that's it though, because his book on marriage was takes three to get married. It's almost become a common slogan today, but he was kind of pioneering that way back when because he knew what was that threat. He talks about he will say it takes three to make love, not two. You, your spouse, and God.
Yeah,
And when we and as there has been a progression over the last 200 and almost 50 years now, since the French Revolution, to completely remove God from all aspects of society. Whereas in the centuries leading up to that, it was this buildup of Christendom where the gospel was truly at the heart of a nation's uh, its commerce, its obviously its faith life, um, its economics, all of those things. It permeated that, and there's been an erosion, and you can easily see today the erosion as that erosion increased. Countries have completely collapsed. St. John Paul II warned Europe when the European Union was realized. It was actually founded back like in 1950s.
yeah,
People don't realize that. I was in Europe when all this happened. By the way, I was studying in Rome, and I was in Ireland when it happened. Right before they joined, because it was 2002, I think. Because I saw
yeah.
all the signs. John Paul II warned Europe, and he says, I beg you, you need to explicitly acknowledge Christianity as the heart and the bedrock of civilization of Europe. If you ignore this history, this patrimony, and its realism for what everything, because the Catholic Church in Europe built Western civilization,
That's right.
this entire thing will crumble. And if you watch what happened, every single nation that joined it was quickly then, they all joined it for economics. That's the way that you get drawn in. Well, look at the
Yeah,
benefits that you get. And then as soon as you do that, then take your crucifixes out of your schools, Catholic schools in Ireland, you're offending Muslims. I mean, it was like lightning fast. And then, so that breakdown removing God was the number one threat. So Sheen was always about it. You have to have God in there and it has to be nourished. So it almost sounds overly simplistic, but it's true. You have families that are God's at the center and those who don't. And you can see that. And then people wonder, well, whatever happened to my children? So that's really the starting point. Um, and
yeah. I
yeah, go
think,
ahead.
sorry to cut over you, but
No, no.
just to on that point that people wonder what the problem is, but they don't know. I think at this stage, even that they don't know Jesus, they don't understand the value of a Christian society, that the values that this society has been built on, like it's being so firmly erased and uh, belittled. You know that it's made out like it's not that much or not that important, but we can see it that it is. That is what the problem is, that it's not there.
You're right, and we can get more specific on those things as well, because it's, when you say God, well, what exactly are you referring to? Well, for us Catholics, it's the faith itself, and it's not necessarily just like the articles of our faith. It's the living of our faith, and it's the passing on our faith that matters. Our faith is alive. This is one of the things that Fulton Sheen fought so hard, especially, I mean, really all throughout his life. And as a priest, he was a priest for 60 years. But after, in the 60s and 70s, when that moral disintegration was taking place, he saw the dangers. And if the faith wasn't fostered by what does it mean for Christ to live in us, then everything becomes mechanical. And then eventually your faith doesn't really mean anything. If anything, it comes across as like it's the one thing that's preventing me from happiness, because it's like you don't do this, don't do that.
Yeah.
It's just that you're kind of stuck in these commandments. And then this also, it corresponded with the way people viewed the church. And in Europe has, each of the countries in general has kind of their own experience of that. You kind of almost, you can characterize it almost like as a clericalism, like an absolute trust in the priest, which is, in one sense, one should have that, in the sense of like he's dedicated to his priesthood. He should be the one person you can trust. But that's all fallen. That whole, unfortunately, and now nobody trusts the clergy. So the devil has worked his way in on all of these different things, and then people say, "Well, look, if this is true and these experiences are hurting people, why be a part of a church that does that?" So we're scrambling to help present what the church truly is. And that responsibility comes to the family, comes to the parents. And if they haven't been living that way, it's basically like we keep a spiritual pulse of our family, in that we go to mass on Sunday and we observe just what liturgical law demands.
The
You're
bare
barely
minimum.
alive. Yeah, I mean, you're living on life support in a
Yeah.
world that is on that, where the winds of the world are so strong, they just blow anybody over
Yeah.
unless you're deeply rooted. And we've seen that since then. And so, it's it all comes down it all comes down to the family. As John Paul II put it, as the family goes, so goes the nation and the world in which we live. So if we're going to rebuild all of these things, and we see that happening today, there's a mass awakening that's taking place in Europe, but it's not coinciding with an awakening of the Catholic faith being what built what was lost now, and has created the world in which they're living in. It's and at the same time, to many people, or most people, they see the church as something that's lost its moral credibility.
Yeah.
So why trust that? So it's like an aimless movement. When people are waking up, they do understand it's kind of like Christianity. People are flocking to Christianity right now,
Yeah.
and the Catholic Church they're realizing too there aren't many real options. The more they get to understand the church, it's like they're going to either to the Catholic Church or they're going to the Orthodox Church, because they at least stand for something, even if
Yeah.
people in there don't live it. But so we're at a transitional moment where the battle's for the family, and the battlefront isn't way out there. It's not in some other country. It's under our roof. It's at the
In
dinner
our home.
table. Yeah, it's with our children. It's depending if they go to schools. It's with the schools themselves. Like everything it's a revolution that's taking place, ideologically, and even spiritually. And the saints of these times they're coming out of the families,
Yeah.
they're the ones that are helping to kind of refound their countries. I know in our country, that's how I see it.
Yeah.
As I mentioned with St. Patrick, when I was in Ireland last year for a while, this is not just some mere, Irish devotion,
No.
because it's, you mentioned this and it's like, no, this is real. This is
Yeah.
happening. And, and this is what gives a lot of hope as well. So I know I'm putting a lot out there, but, in the end, it comes down to what's under every roof. And Sheen, he had so many, uh, little wise sayings, about that. I think it's important to, especially for married couples, it comes down to the marriage itself. And
Yeah.
when marriages are split today, it's, it's a reflection of the church, and the children see that as a reflection or a disfigurement of what God's love is, because God's love is in the family. And there's so many reasons for why there's brokenness that you can't just, categorize it all under one thing and oversimplify it. That does a lot of injustice, because a lot of people are experiencing
Suffering.
injustice.
Yeah. There's
But
a lot. Yeah, and you've covered a lot there. Just to draw on a few points. Um, I think that I'll go with the most recent one you talked about the most important is in the family and then under our own roofs. Um, because we are competing with so much as parents, in the secular culture, and you can't really. It's not good to keep them locked in the house, or locked away from the world, because they have to learn to live in it. But what practical, like Sheen inspired habits, like he had a lot to speak about the families, but how can we go about um implementing these habits to build our domestic church so that they are strongly rooted?
yeah, well, that's, the $1 trillion question, or euro question, I guess I should say. Or I guess I should say the sterling question, because up in the north. Uh, but well, I look at Sheen's life, and when we look at the saints, we sometimes look at the more spectacular things. But when in his autobiography, Treasure and Clay, he talks about the molding of the clay, where it started. And when you look at what was God's hidden wisdom as people rediscover it, he was born in a poor family, right above a shop, basically, a little town in the middle of nowhere. And um, the things that he remembered was when he worked on a farm. So, in other words, like getting out, connecting with work, real work.
Yeah.
Not like that's the only work, but in the sense of, he said he hated it, by the way. He's like, I hated farming. He was definitely not meant for that world. But
Yeah.
the lessons that he learned, he said, I learned more than anything the ethic of hard work. And he says, and I'm so glad that that has continued to every aspect of my life, because that was, he said, that I learned it as a child. And then he said also the climate of his home was very peaceful, but they prayed the rosary every single night. That may seem like, well, we've heard that before, but are we praying it every night as a family?
Yeah.
What does our family revolve around each day? And it's like in the business world, in that if somebody says, "What's your goal?" and you say, well, my goal is to maybe make a certain amount or achieve a certain level of degree of whatever you're working at, accomplish something. And they'll say, well, now show me what your daily schedule looks like. And then I'll tell you what you really value. And you go through it. And it's like, look, you're only, this is your goal, which is going to, which is really important. And in the end, you're spending an hour a day on that. Good luck, or you're not, or you're doing an hour a week. Like,
Yeah.
well, it's when I have time. Well, so same thing with family life is, and we have conversations about this, especially now, as my older children are now moving out of the house, and we have one who's kind of in a gap year, and we're talking about what's our we were literally talking about this right now. What is our family life going to look like? And we have to start with what is most important, and then how is that practically reflected in our home? Not because if you leave it vague, well, we got to love each other. We got to go to church. Like, Judas was with Jesus for 3 years. He went everywhere with him. But his, like Fulton Sheen said, he never had faith. He never had faith. And it was really faith in the Eucharist that was the breaking point. Because the first time he's mentioned as being the betrayer was right after Jesus announced the Eucharist in John 6. It mentions the one who would betray him. So that question, what does our home life revolve around? For Sheen, he said that's of all his memories. He says the rosary was prayed faithfully in our home every day as a family, and whenever he was when he was the celebrant at a nuptial mass, he would lean over to the couple and he would plead with them, essentially saying, "Of all things, imitate the Holy Family and be a family of prayer. Make sure you pray the rosary every single night in your home. It will change everything." And I know that in my own life, in my own marriage and family, that has been a linchpin because no matter what's going on, you rally back to prayer, even if you're going to it with anger because of what one of your children said, or you just had a fight with your spouse, or whatever it is. And sometimes you fail. I mean, I'll speak for myself. It's like, I'm half Irish, so like that. So I think I could probably speak. I'll bet you if I say this is probably true for 99% for Irish
Okay.
men, is that when you get mad, you don't really yell, you get really quiet. Like you don't do anything. It's like the ice block is there and you just do like whatever. I don't know.
The
That's
quiet
been
is
my
the
experience.
worst. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
bad.
it's almost like yell at me for something so we have something to argue over. And versus it's sort of like the coldness and the stubbornness. But but you need something to come back to, for that. So that's one thing, the rosary, and then of course, like it's the culture of your home, and I tried to put some exact quotes of Sheen together before I came, and I don't know if I remember them, but one of them was like a happy marriage is a union of two good forgivers.
Back a while back, you mentioned about the three-way, uh, three to get married, the book that Fulton Sheen wrote. So, for any of us that are struggling with trying to keep God in the center, um, how can we practically, because it does, even, I'm married now 13 years and you're married a long time yourself. I'm sure like there's different seasons of your marriage where you come together and everything's great and then you'd go and you're busy doing other things. But how do you get that back that it's not keep that at the forefront, that it's not just the two, it's three, and to keep like this Christ-centered union.
Mm-hmm. Well, Sheen talks about this in different ways, but essentially, both spouses have to have a deep relationship with our Lord. Period.
Yeah.
And so often that responsibility, or is treated as a responsibility that's for the wife. And you see this in different cultures. And I've lived in different countries in Europe, and you see that much more in Europe than you see in America. Um, like when I was in Italy, you wouldn't even see the men at mass because they felt like their wife being present
Was enough.
counted for them, and God only knows what the men were doing. But a part of this, like you both have to go and be filled by where the source is, and neither of you are that source for each other. This is a really important point. He says one of the biggest things is in a marriage, a man promises a woman something he can't give, and a woman promises something that she can't give. Only God can give the kind of love that they both seek. And to know that your spouse every day is spending some time with the Lord, whether it's in a church or whether he has time of prayer to himself, you have to have that. Then you have something to give each other that is the source of the flame that you want to see really, become ablaze when you are together. And so, that's a big part of it too. Like men have to, the husbands, they have to lead in these areas by example. Otherwise, you're just almost pouring water on something that's meant on yourself, which makes the flame of love that God has, He's given to, let's say, for speaking for men here, to your wife, and you can't really receive it, or you receive it almost with contempt because, oh well, it's she's making me feel bad or guilty. Catholics are really good about making others feel guilty. Um, so that's a huge thing, because that's why marriages break down, is when they'll say, look, you're not making me happy. Well, I can't make you fully happy, and you can't make me really happy. Only when God is present in our life do all the colors from a black and white grayscale image come to life with vibrancy. Then we have something to give. Just like when a child's born, sex is the material part of it, and it has a bonding. There's a lot of beautiful things between the spouses, but God gives the soul. So that's why it's a Trinitarian act.
Yeah.
It's not like you don't have to go off and get theology degrees to understand these things. These are just fundamental things and analogies that help us to see that if we don't do these things in the natural world, you can't light a fire on a wet log. So how do you make it ripe? And that's, you be close to the source. The source will warm it. It'll dry out all that stuff. And then eventually that spark will come. And that, combined with a culture of mercy, I mentioned that quote from Sheen about forgiving, telling you that's been the secret for our family, because we're a pretty passionate family. Yeah, we're pretty passionate. So it's like,
you
there's
have
not much.
seven children as well.
Yeah, I have 7 children as well, from 23 to all the way to about 16 months, 17 months, 16, 17 months. And yeah, I mean, I'm half Irish and I'm half Puerto Rican. My wife's got Irish. She's got a whole bunch of things in her side too, but we're pretty passionate people. She's a very alpha sanguine kind of her personality.
Yeah.
So when she wants to share something, she's going to share it, and she has a strong opinion. I have really strong opinions, and I like to be almost like a control freak. Like, you could already see this is a recipe for, massive wars if it's not handled right. And it's one of those things where we keep having to say to each other, 70 times 7. Usually it comes across sometimes as a text, because I'm not the one who's, I'm not man enough at that moment to be like, I'm going to initiate this because I'm holding, well, she did this. But these things have made the difference. It's who's going to break that block of ice for the moment. And when you do, God does great things. He doesn't, you don't just go back to the way something was. God's mercy always it restores even more. So a culture of mercy is really important to foster, not just in your marriage, but in your home. But your kids will learn it from you. That's the worst feeling of a parent, is when you see something passed on to your child that's negative, and you can honestly say, yeah, he learned it from me. She learned it from me. She learned it from, my bad example in a marriage. Yeah. Now I can sit there and have a pity party and just be like, oh my gosh, like, well, what, I can't do anything right, and let's just survive. No, that's why God's there to give us grace. I mean, how many people actually ask for the grace of the sacrament of their marriage? I think this is one of the biggest prayers that's never done by spouses. And I have to remind myself a lot more. I think it's the grace of the Holy Spirit, because I've been praying for it a lot more recently, thinking, yeah.
I heard that once. Yeah. I heard it once years ago, and I asked different priests, and they weren't, they hadn't heard it said that way before. And it was a priest giving a homily, and he said that you need to ask for the grace through the sacrament of your marriage. It is a sacrament. There are graces to be received, and we don't. But it's just so busy, I think, with family life that you get so caught up in everything that's going on around you, in the marriage and the family, with the children, school, sports, blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. The list goes on.
Yeah, it's a competition for our attention. And just real quick on that, the point about the sacrament part. The sacrament of marriage is the only sacrament that the grace is conferred through the spouses.
That's right.
They confer it to each other. So just imagine if it's only one is on fire with the faith. Now you can still pray and communicate what you can, but like when there's a stop sign on the other side, or there's a plug in the pipe, wow! Like, of course, something that's plugged up or just keeps hitting it is eventually over time just going to burst. But when you both are communicating that grace, it's almost like we haven't quite seen what that will do for marriages, and we don't think about it enough. And then you mentioned that all the things we're up against. Um, we are too, and at times it leads to a lot of tension of like, gosh, like she's not home again, or she's got now. My daughter was like never home the senior year, but it was a year we made a sacrifice because we homeschooled our kids and did hybrids. I mean, homeschooling means anything nowadays, but like
Yeah.
you just find what works. Sometimes it's going to this part time here. You just kind of take what you can for that's good. But anyway, she went to a Catholic academy that was really strong and she needed it. But it took her away from us almost the whole school year because she was up at 5:30, drove an hour to school, was there till 3, drove back an hour home, and then she was either at soccer practice, um, or track, or she's training, and then we see her like at 8 o'clock at night, and then while we're all transitioning, getting ready to go to bed, and then so like we never. It was hard. Like she missed that, but she really needed that for her thing. But I get my point though is we're competing against these things, and now that she's home and now she's really immersed. She's taking a year off to really discern God's will. She's like, I really missed that part of being in the family, and simplifying our lives is something that both spouses and the children, but especially starting with the spouses, should sit down and say, what do we really want? Because what good is it if your child is the next Lionel Messi and they lose their soul?
Yeah.
Or you know so anyway, I simplifying things in a complex world is a big challenge, but I think it's necessary, and I think deep down kids really want it. My kids, they get frustrated at times, and they actually will communicate that, and it's the last thing I was expecting to come out of their mouth was was that. I was almost like I thought you were looking for ways to almost get out, because your life is busy. But they're like, no, they want analog things now. They're kind of sick of the social media. Like Fulton Sheen
Yeah.
says, the world's never been so connected through
Yet
media and digital
disconnected.
things. He says, yet we're so alone.
Yeah.
Suicide rates skyrocketing, depression among the youth. All these across the board. So we can't control the world, but parents can control their family. They have a responsibility to do that. And if they have to course correct, then you need to course correct. And it might not be easy, but the
But
alternative is
it's
much
okay
worse.
to do that. I think we don't give ourselves a break. Do you know that we think, well, we've started doing this, so we have to keep doing everything. And, you can either go until everybody drops or there's a complete breakdown, or you can just stop and take a step back and just think, right, what needs to change here? This is not working. One of the children is, suffering because of this, or whatever it is for your family or your marriage or whatever's going on. And like, just to know that that's okay. That, there's no one set rule. You don't have to do this because everybody else is doing it. What goes on in your home is between you, your spouse, and the good Lord Himself. And whatever that looks like for you, if that's discerned between the two of you, the Lord will bless it.
Mhm.
And it's not up to anybody else, I suppose, is and give yourself a break.
Yeah, there's a war on for our time and for our families. So it's not like if we're not fighting for it, and you have to fight for it, then the world will take them in some way. The biggest responsibility is that when they become older, that you feel okay. Like you wish that you don't want them to go out into among the wolves and all the stuff that's out there. But you could also be like, I've done my best. My child does this, and this. That's critical to their faith. They have a strong prayer life. I mean, it's not. This is not rocket science, but it seems like it because it's how many are committed to it. You know, I tell my kids go to confession regularly at the at least once a month, but every couple of weeks would be really good. It'll keep your conscience sensitive. Um, and make sure you have time of prayer each day. As somebody who follows Fulton Sheen, the daily holy hour was the one thing that changed my life back when I first heard him, and it's something that I've committed my life to ever since. Haven't been perfect. I've had my share of days that I've missed, but they're very few in between because, like Sheen says, and it's hard, and most of the time you won't want to make it, but it makes the difference. She says when you start making it, you realize your day can't make it through a day without it. And that's a good feeling to have. He says, because it keeps you constantly tethered to the Lord. As the head of my family, I also feel that's a responsibility that I need to think of my responsibility as the head of the family.
Yeah.
And now my son does it. He's 15, Beckett. I never asked him to do it. I never wanted to be one of those where it's like, I mean, we do pray the rosary. That's not an option. And they're grateful for that. They're always grateful. But this was, he's like, yeah, he was going through a hard time. It was, it's always usually something that triggers it. And I said, look, you need, in order to get out of this, you really need to, I can't give you what you need. The Lord's going to have to give it to you because it's strength and discipline that's going to be inspired by him. And he's going to give you the grace to do it. And you come and just watch what will happen. And he started making a holy hour with me because you couldn't really get into the church when I was going unless I was with him. Then it was good for me. It reminded me to go. But now he makes it every day. Like when he's traveling, like if you can't make it to a church, Sheen says you can make it at home. I travel sometimes a lot in periods. So I make my holy hour on my flight. I'm like a 3-hour flight. I'm like, all right, I put noise canceling headphones on and I just, for an hour, I focus on
So your
meditation.
holy hour doesn't have to be, because that's what I was thinking. There's not adoration on here every day, or I can't get out of the house, but just taking that time daily to pray,
Mm-hmm.
dedicated to the Lord.
Yep, be focused. And what helps too is have a little prayer corner in your house, or depending on the size of your house, maybe it's larger. I mean, we have a tiny house where we live, but we have a little place where we have, well, kind of two places where we can pray. One's up in our little loft where my wife and I are. We have a little shelf that's a little prayer corner. But that way you also have a place to withdraw, because the point of the hour, there's a lot of reasons, but it's to bring us back to one of the crises that we have is we don't take time out to reflect on our lives and our relationship with God and the things that matter, and the hour helps us to do that. And so just have a quiet space where you can, without distraction. And if you have a number of kids at home, my kids don't like it when I say this, but they know what I mean. And it's like, well, so-and-so needs help. I'm like, well, that's why I got kids. You're going to do it. You're going to, okay, you deal with that. Like, well,
Yeah.
I'm like, just, because this is where they learn everything. And then next thing you know, it becomes easier for them. And I'm not going to have spoiled kids, or ungrateful kids. And you battle that
Not
all
when
the
you have
time.
that many. They all need to do their bit.
Yeah. And if you do it right for the older ones,
Yeah.
then the younger ones learn kind of by example. But anyway, those simple things make all the difference. And I personally believe that's one of the biggest things of the significance of Fulton Sheen's beatification and canonization, is that's the one thing that he said will, one, save the priesthood, give the priesthood a renaissance, and it will also be what saves entire nations, and it will save the family. So that's not really talked about, and I guess you could see why, because if you're not doing it, or really you're committed to it, then it's hard to talk about something if you're not doing it.
Yeah.
So it's like, you pray the rosary, and you could dread, like, well, I hope they don't ask me that. Like, I know I should be doing that, and so example is everything. And when you keep it simple at home, and I if you want to boil it down for all those who are listening, it's the message of Fatima. What Fulton Sheen lived was the message of Fatima:
Yeah.
adoration, daily rosary, consecration to Mary, and making sacrifices for sinners. That's it. Those are the 4 pillars of Fatima. Sheen lived all of those heroically. That's actually his spirituality. But for the family,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's
What was
new
the first thing that
information.
happened?
Yeah.
It, it wasn't 1917, it was 1916 when the angel appeared to the children
Yes.
to prepare them in a
Oh,
world that was falling apart in the year. I love history. Is this 1917 was such a huge year. It
yeah.
was you probably know all these anniversaries that were happening at that time. The founding of Freemasonry in England, 1717. The Protestant Revolution of Martin Luther started in 1517.
17, yeah.
The Bolshevik Revolution was 1917. Planned Parenthood, the eugenics movement was 1916, 1917. You just started going through all of these things. Of course, World War I was going on. The U.S.
Yeah.
entered the war. But and so, what was the answer to all of this pointing to a godless world? Well, the angel appears to the children, and in 1916, three times, spring, summer, and fall. And the first thing he teaches the children, first thing out of his mouth, pray with me. And they imitated him. And then, he has the Blessed Sacrament, and he prostrates himself. And he says, say this prayer: My God, I believe, I adore, I hope, and I love you. I beg pardon for those who do not believe, do not adore, do not hope, and do not love you. He said it three times. And he said, pray in this way. The hearts of Jesus and Mary are now ready to listen to you. It's like the greatest spiritual direction ever. Why to speak for myself when I go into prayer, sometimes I'm like, why am I doing what Jesus says? I rattle off a lot of things, or a petition. I'll present this petition like 8 different ways, hoping that one of them had the magic formula of words. And I'm like, I just wasted an hour about myself. And when the crisis is God being eclipsed in the world today, the angel teaches the children a catechesis of prayer that begins with adoration is the first thing, acknowledging God, being grateful for God. The best thing you can instill in your children, I think, is the spirit of gratitude. Because it's even the master saints would say it's impossible to commit a sin, especially a mortal sin, when your heart is grateful to the Lord. And that opens a soul up to receive even more grace. So, and then Our Lady appears, so adoration, and then the angel of peace, angel of Portugal, says, well, the Lord wants you to make sacrifices for sinners. Like, think of others, for other
Yeah.
people. So, and at this time, Jacinta's only 6 years old, and Francisco's 8, and Lucia's 9. One of the big criticisms that people would give is, oh, I can't give this to my children. Like, that's just maybe for them, but that's going to turn them off. What God did at Fatima is the blueprint for families, and they can take it. As a matter of fact, they're much more generous in their response to those requests than adults are.
Yeah.
And that's what made them, like, little Jacinta was the most heroic of them all. She offered up everything she could for sinners. And when Our Lady appears, she says, pray the rosary every day for peace and end to the war. And she says, make sacrifices. She asked them, will you make sacrifices for sinners? And they're like, yes, we will. And she didn't say, oh, I'm so proud of you. You little, now you're 7 and you're 9 and 10. Like, what heroic things like, who would even think of responding like that, which is true. She's like, instead, Our Lady says, well, then you're going to have much to suffer. You're like, well, not the answer we're probably expecting, but because they could handle it, and she knew what was at stake. And then when she showed them a vision of hell at that same age, they saw so many souls being lost. They said it was like snowflakes due to
Yeah.
impurity, the denial of the existence of hell. It's like our children can handle this incredible story that we're in. And it's not like the world has it where you're like on a conveyor belt until you reach the age of being productive for the state. I don't know what it's called in Europe. We call it high school before you go to college, but it's a conveyor belt. Like, you don't really have a purpose until it's determined for you and it's purely functional. Like, to be an entrepreneur is like out of the mold. It's the scariest thing for the
Yeah.
world because somebody thinks for themselves. But anyway, we have that simple blueprint for families right there in Fatima. So why complicate it? If the plan to save the world and bring peace to the world was entrusted to a 10-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 7-year-old, I think we adults can certainly handle that. And our Lord says, unless you become like little children, you won't enter the kingdom of heaven. So Fulton Sheen says, and this is actually encouraging, we
Yeah.
have a duty as we grow older, we have a duty to become younger.
Yeah. It's so true. And I love that when you're talking about all those dates and all those anniversaries of 1917, and that the angel of peace came and the prayer was for, prayers for reparation, like that God sent his mother. He didn't come. He did, it wasn't anybody else. It was his mother. And I suppose that just shows you the important role, not just of Our Lady, obviously of Our Lady, but we need to remember, like, as models of Mary, as women, as mothers, that we're trying to be more like Our Lady.
Absolutely.
That
It's
the
interesting.
Yeah, sorry, the
On
importance
the
of that for us as
Yeah,
well in our role.
absolutely. And I think we could talk about that more. Sheen has a number of things to say on that. Um, Before I forgot, I didn't mean to interject. It was just this being brought to the final apparition when the miracle of the sun took place. That of the different appearances afterward was Our Lady of Mount Carmel, but
Hmm.
then there was the Holy Family. A
Yes.
subtle message among the messages of the centrality and the importance of the family and the Holy Family. And every home should have an image, an icon, or something of the Holy Family that's prominent that everyone can see. So it's also a reminder that who's in the center of your home and who are you trying to emulate? Because when you break into a fight, you want to, look and be nice to have a reminder. It usually is a moment of judgment, like, oh gosh, I'm anything but that. But you know what? You're still called to be that. So get over yourself, apologize, whatever it is, and start again. Being able to start again, I think, is one of the most heroic characteristics of today's families that will characterize the sanctity of families is being able to embrace a culture of mercy and
Yeah.
respecting each other's roles. That's a big source of tension in homes. Is often men want respect, women want love. How does that work together? Anyway, that's like the that's the quadrillion-dollar question. You
Yes, I
know.
was going to say, yes, how does that work? Peter, please share.
I think we're out of time, Sinead. Maybe next time I'll put
Maybe next time, yes.
Chantal will come on. She'll talk about that.
Oh,
No,
that would be
but
amazing, yeah.
actually, she would be great to have. She would be. I mean, she has this Catholic finishing school for girls, and her focus is on their transition from their your younger years to adolescence, and their vocation. But these are. It's not like one dominates the other. I mean, you're both called to love. God is love, so God has to be present. But there are distinct roles, and it is a battle of Satan. One of his tactics is to make them seem as if they're or to try to neutralize them versus saying, well, if this is a point of contention, why even get into that? Men have to learn things about women that's going to increase how much they are their responsibility to honor them. Um, and like Fulton Sheen's one of his quotes, he says, "When a man loves a woman, he has to become worthy of her. The higher her virtue, the more a man has to aspire to be worthy of her. That sense inspires a woman because then she feels seen. She's experiences being seen, known, and loved. And we've seen women, and they bring the best or the worst out of men because of their profound influence on man. I mean, whole wars have been fought in history over a woman and the influence that she's had. I mean, John the Baptist's head. I mean, that was a really messed up situation, but it was King Herod and his uh, what was it, Herodias's daughter. And it was like,
Yes. She
so
wanted his head.
yeah, exactly, and that pleasure that he had cost that, and he was willing to give up to half of his kingdom. And so a lot of times there's a lot of finger pointing of things, but there are central truths that are always there. And when they are lived, and you have to live them in spite of what the other's doing, because a man will say, or a woman will say, I want to be loved, and I don't feel loved by my husband. Well, the first thing he'll probably say is, well, I don't feel respected by my wife. So why is she going to get that love?
Yeah.
And round you go. And so who's going to break the cycle? Who's going to be first? Each of them has to be first in their own mind.
That goes
I will
back to
say,
Fulton Sheen's quote there
mhm,
that you said earlier. Marriage is made up of two forgiving people, is it?
yeah, exactly. The two who perpetually forgive each other.
Yeah.
And but the other thing is to realize what it does. It's sort of like the experiment. No matter what your husband's doing, wives try this. Like from a man, I can say this is what men are seeking. Because in the end, there is always that. Like a Dominican priest of mine from a long, long, long time ago said, Father Giles. He said, "Man is so in love with woman whom he can't understand, and woman is so in love with man whom she can't understand, and therein lies the cross." And there, that reality is there. But there are certain things, though, um, that are true that will almost immediately bring great things out of each other. And for man, it does. He wants to feel. He needs to feel that what he's doing is makes a difference. For the family, he kind of judges his worth on what he's able to do, where a woman is much more on who she is, and Sheen talks about that as well. Um, you know, I'll see if I can find one of these quotes. He says, "The mark of man is initiative, but the mark of woman is cooperation. Man talks about freedom, woman about sympathy, love, sacrifice. Man cooperates with nature, woman cooperates with God. Man was called to till the earth, woman to be the bearer of a life that comes from God." And that's the thing with the vocation of womanhood is so exalted because she alone has that vocation of being the bearer of God's gifts. It's like that's why you can see why the devil he knows that and hates it. So his number one thing is contraception to
Yeah.
prevent that, literally plug that up, and then two, if that fails, abortion. So, and that's why Sheen also says the history of civilization uh, is determined by the level of its womanhood.
Yes.
So they are the gatekeepers, and men are the protectors of that. Adam didn't protect Eve. I mean, that was like the big mystery of that whole fall. Is he gave Eve devil serpent goes to Eve, she takes it, eats it, and then she gives it to Adam, and he ate it. When you read
Yeah.
it like that, like he's standing right there the whole time, and he said nothing. Like, hey, God said we're not supposed to be like doing
Yeah.
this. Doesn't matter what this creature's saying. Like we're not. He said nothing, not one word. So that's another reason why we see Jesus' entire life is he is the Word, and the cost of that word cost him the passion and death and everything that he sacrificed. And a man is meant to represent that, live that in the marriage. And a woman, she's meant to receive that, not to criticize it or judge it. So it's so one of those things where the more that this complementarity is understood and accepted, then you begin to realize, yeah, we talk about it different, ways. Love languages, what's your love language of your
Yeah.
spouse? But it actually is important. They might not, she might not care that I go out of my way and because I like things to be clean and I'm always, doing the dishes or other things. And I'm like, hey, somebody else could have done this, but I did it. He's like, no, I'm more like words of affirmation. And I'm like, ugh, all right. Like I'm almost forcing the things that I think she should have as her love language, but isn't, you know.
Yes.
So anyway, that gets into more psychology of things, but you know,
Interesting, but yes, I think we've covered absolutely loads and we've been on for ages, so I think we'll have to bring it to a close and,
that
and no doubt we could chat for another hour and a half. But just to if you want to share before we go off, where can we connect? You're the president of the Fulton Sheen Institute. If you give
Mhm.
the web address, and
Sure.
I think I think from what we've spoke about for over an hour now, the multiple references, everybody needs to go and buy Treasure and Clay. You won't regret it. But
Exactly.
if you want to give some contact details for the website.
Sure. Thank you. Yes. Well, we have two lungs to what we do. the the main one is the Fulton Sheen Institute. We do all of our formation, retreats, pilgrimages. We go through there. And as we grow, a lot of great projects are in the works. So fultonsheeninstitute.com. Um, I don't know when this will be released, but if it's before July 16th, I know that one of the things that my wife is doing that ties into what we're talking about, they're having a very special pilgrimage. That's the emphasis is really for mothers and daughters. Others can come. It's really, if you can't, it could be also a father and a son, but the emphasis is really on mothers and daughters. And it's a pilgrimage through Western France, where through Normandy and Brittany, and it's to give them an opportunity that will probably never come back if you miss this kind of a window of a mother and a daughter in this key moment of discernment in their life. And this pilgrimage is designed to take them through that, through the places that they're going to be, from Rue de Bac in Paris, Mont Saint Michel. Adoration's been there for 24/7 for 100 years. It's where Sheen always went when he was in Paris. Anyway, all these beautiful places. Marian shrines, the only place that Saint Anne, the mother of Mary, appeared. The shrine of Saint Andre. Mont Saint Michel. Like, it's to give experiences and an opportunity for mothers and their daughters to be able to have, like I said, an experience that is so necessary, often overlooked and missed, and you don't quite get that back. So you can check that out. That, like I said, that's and
16th of July, is it?
16th of July. So it's 2 weeks. Oh, but yeah, almost 2 weeks from today. It's recording on the first. But there'll probably not be something like that we'll be able to offer in this climate
In the
probably
future.
again. So check that out. That's all. You go to our fultonsheeninstitute.com website. Just go to pilgrimages and you'll see it there.
And that's where everything is, yeah.
Yeah, and if you want to learn anything about the beatification, I mean, you guys, you're across the pond, but excitement of things that we're doing, because I think we'll be streaming it as well.
Oh, brilliant.
Information
Yeah,
on
that's
that.
I meant to ask that earlier on. Will it be streamed so we can tune in? Probably
The
will.
the beatification will be streamed. So there'll be a lot of places around the world that will be there to stream the mass itself,
Brilliant.
and we're going to have a conference the day before that. We're offer opportunities for people to watch that as well. We're working on all those logistics for that. Um, so, and
Lots of exciting things, and hopefully a
yeah,
trip back to Ireland.
it is. Well, like, I feel like I have a second home there. After the times I was there last year. I mean, and I mean that because, like, the people that I've met now, I'm meeting you, Sinead, at the heart of Catholic mothers. It's just kind of funny. I'm like, I talked to my wife. I said, Chantal, you should be on this first before me, and you can prep them for whatever I'm going to say and get your first word in. So if you have her on, she'll get the last word now.
Excellent.
But anyway, yeah. And that's the other thing too. If I know she's not on this, but if women or mothers are looking for something for their daughters that could help them during this transitional period of discernment, she's on her second round, I believe, right now. Of it's called Catholic Finishing School, and it's
Amazing.
for young women, and it's been so well received. So that's at catholicfinishingschool.com, I believe. So those are the two big things: Fulton Sheen Institute.com,
Um,
catholicfinishingschool.com. I think that's probably good enough for now. So
Excellent. Thank you
thanks.
so, so much for your time. I really enjoyed chatting to you. The time flew, so hopefully it'll be the same. Someone I'll see the length of this and say, I'm not listening to all of this. I'll give it 10 minutes and they'll listen to the whole thing. That's our
Hey,
aim.
maybe, yeah, just change it up, or they'll say, "Oh, I don't like his American accent. I can only do 5 minutes." I don't know. So
Yes.
anyway, it's happy days, as our friend would say, but happy days, happy
Happy
days.
days. Indeed. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I will talk to you soon. God bless.
Thank you, Sinead. God bless you too.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when we release new videos. We appreciate your support and we can't wait to see you in the next one. God bless.